What if a chapter revealed over 1400 years ago could actually challenge our modern beliefs? Seriously, we live in a world where we're just constantly bombarded with information, opinions, and viral trends. But what if the ultimate tool to cut through all of that noise wasn't some fancy new algorithm, but an ancient chapter of the Quran? Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the first 88 verses of Surah Al-An'am, and we're going to look at it through a very specific lens, the lens of a seeker actively searching for the truth.
And you know what's really interesting about this? The source material doesn't just ask you for blind faith. It repeatedly challenges us to stop following tradition simply because, well, it's tradition. It actively demands that we use our own intellect. It's basically asking us to open our eyes, look at the world around us, and actually think for ourselves.
Which leads us to a huge question. Why do we so often just follow trends without a single shred of evidence? Over the next few minutes, we're going to uncover some really profound lessons from the surah on observation, logical deduction, and ultimate personal accountability. Because this text, it teaches us a lot about faith, for sure, but it equally emphasizes the absolute importance of evidence.
Let's jump into our first major theme, the evidence in creation. This section completely reframes how we view the physical universe. It tells us that the world isn't just random chance. It's literal, undeniable evidence waiting to be analyzed. The surah points out these massive signs of a creator scattered everywhere. We're talking about the heavens, the earth, the cycle of day and night, the rain and rivers that keep us alive. And one of my absolute favorite details, it points out that animals and birds exist in complex communities, just like us. It's actively pushing us toward this deep environmental awareness instead of just walking blindly through the world.
To really put that massive scale into perspective, the text zooms all the way in. It says, "Not even a leaf falls without his knowledge." Think about that. It effortlessly scales down from the massive architectural wonders of the entire galaxy to the microscopic level of a single falling leaf. It shows an originator who literally misses nothing.
Moving on to section 2, rejecting the blind following.
Because, look, just observing nature isn't quite enough. The surah has a really sharp critique for those who refuse to think for themselves. It draws this stark, undeniable contrast. On one side, you have the intellectual darkness of just blindly accepting whatever your ancestors or your peers are doing. The text literally calls those who willfully ignore the signs as deaf and dumb, lost in darkness. But on the flip side, you have the attentive. It says only the attentive will respond. That is such a powerful call to use our reason, especially today with so much misinformation flying around.
And it gets even deeper. The text warns us that things like arrogance and stubbornness can actually create a metaphorical veil over a person's heart. Verse 25 points out that for some people, even if you showed them every single piece of undeniable evidence, they still wouldn't believe it, because these veils literally block them from comprehending the truth. They become entirely immune to logic. It really makes you stop and wonder, right? What biases are acting as veils over our own hearts right now? Which brings us to section 3, Ibrahim's search for truth. To show us exactly how to break through those veils, the surah gives us the ultimate historical masterclass in critical thinking with Prophet Ibrahim. And what he does is basically a scientific method of deduction. He doesn't just blindly accept his society's idol worship. He observes a star, it sets, and he reasons, "I do not love things that set." Then he watches the moon disappear. Then he looks at the sun, the biggest, brightest thing in the sky. But when the sun sets too, it hits him. Anything bound by time and change absolutely cannot be the ultimate creator. And that realization leads to this incredibly brave breakthrough. He says, "O my people, I totally reject whatever you associate with Allah in worship." Based purely on his own logical observation, he stands entirely alone against his whole society to reject their unquestioned idols. For any modern seeker of truth, that is a massive lesson. You have to be willing to question the status quo when the evidence points the other way. Let's look at section 4, the oneness of God, or Tawheed. Ibrahim's realization leads us directly into the core thesis of the entire surah. Associating partners with the Creator is fundamentally illogical. Why? Because he alone holds the keys to the unseen and to all of existence. The surah constantly challenges the idea of multiple gods or ultimate worldly authorities, making it totally clear that human opinions and fabricated idols have absolutely zero real power. I love how the text flips the script right here and points directly at us with a rhetorical question. It asks, imagine if Allah were to take away your hearing or your sight. Who else other than Allah could restore it? It's such a grounding reality check. It proves that no worldly trend, no influencer, no human leader has ultimate control over our very existence.
All right, Section 5, ultimate personal accountability.
So if we're given the intellect to observe nature and the reasoning to deduce the truth like Ibrahim, what's the inevitable consequence? It's ultimate personal accountability. The surah completely strips away our modern excuses. It calls our worldly distractions just play and amusement compared to the reality of the hereafter. In the end, there is no other protector, no intercessor. Every single individual is entirely responsible for their own actions. You cannot pass the buck to someone else.
The text uses this strikingly visceral metaphor for this. It says, individuals will literally bear the burden of their sins on their backs. Evil, indeed, is their burden. It is a heavy, inescapable visual of the weight of ignored truths and blind conformity. No one else is going to carry that moral weight for you.
But, right alongside that really intense warning is this incredibly beautiful, grounding promise. For those who do use their minds to seek the truth and who act righteously, the text promises absolute security. It says, whoever believes and does good, there will be no fear for them, nor will they grieve. It perfectly balances the heavy responsibility of critical thinking with the profound peace of finally finding the truth. So as we wrap up this explainer, Surah Al-An'am leaves us with a profound challenge. It isn't just about belief, it's a blueprint for ethical living. Toward the end, it lays out these timeless, universal moral principles. Things like protecting human life, caring for orphans, and being honest in business, while strictly warning us not to invent our own rules about what is lawful or unlawful based on what we desire. It shows us the unmatched value of divine revelation over flawed human opinions. So what are the modern idols or algorithms that we need to question today? This chapter is actively urging us to take Ibrahim's courageous critical thinking and apply it right now. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really encourage you to stop and reflect on what you're following today